Steph Martin from the Free Speech Union joins me now. Steph, kia ora. Thanks for your time today.
Good morning, Andrew. Lovely to see you.
It is a little bit concerning that the Education Workforce Committee are just kind of waking up to this. Now, I'm probably being a bit harsh. I'm sure that they're aware that harm is being done, but this consultation process to explore an inquiry as to whether or not harm is being done seems a little bit like after the horse is bolted and the horse is probably behind the cart and all sorts of other mixed metaphors. Now, you will be presenting to this committee a little bit later today, I understand. What will be some of the things you'll be presenting, Steph?
Well, as you say, at the moment, my understanding is that this is kind of like an exploratory stage of what is the nature of the problem and what are some possible strategies or solutions
Okay.
to addressing the problem, which, I think it's a really valid kind of piece of work to be doing. I think, as you say, some of the language that's been used about it is quite interesting. But anyway, I think it's a worthwhile kind of area to be looking into. And so some of the things that we'll be speaking to today are really, you alluded to it just before, around that the balance between, we all recognize, I think, that there is damaging content on the internet that we don't want young people to be exposed to.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly, like, stumbling into things that are very damaging for them psychologically, like that's a real problem that we
Yeah.
we need to think about how we can address. But balancing that with the fact that the solution to that can't be something that involves undermining the rights to freedoms that adults have
Yeah.
under the Bill of Rights Act. So concerns around privacy, concerns around speech, concerns around mass surveillance, some of the things that you would kind of expect. But we'll be talking about terminology, about concerns about terminology, however they choose to define things, however they choose to define the problem, how they choose to define harm, etc. We have concerns about the terminology being too broad, which would then enable kind of broad and blunt instruments for managing the internet
Yeah.
in ways that are imprecise and ill-defined, and no one can really anticipate in advance, which would be highly problematic.
Mm-hmm.
We're concerned about how they calibrate harm and how they define harm,
Mm.
because we've seen, and you and I have spoken before about a kind of specific context in which we've seen the creep of the concept of harm.
Yeah.
So harm reaching into, I said something to you that you didn't like and you maybe took offense to, or that you thought was some kind of controversial idea that shouldn't be voiced. Those sorts of things being bound up in the idea of harm. So we're really wanting to see a very precise definition of harm. And in general, our major point really is that we don't think that top-down approaches are a good idea here.
Yeah.
So things that actually get into looking at the internet infrastructure itself, or asking social media to manage the problem, like social media companies, we don't think those are good solutions. There are lots of problems in both of those contexts.
Yeah.
What we'll be suggesting is advocating for user-end opt-in tools that individuals, parents, caregivers, guardians can choose how they want to filter their own internet experience for themselves and for their children. And that's very consistent with rights, right? It's giving the rights to the individuals and empowering them to how they want to manage their online experience.
I mean, it is a good thing to be discussing this, don't get me wrong, in the same way that stating the obvious is better than putting your head in the sand. However, these are questions about what is harm. I mean, that's such an arbitrary statement, and I'm not saying I want harm to happen to young people on the internet, but defining what harm is about as problematic and overlaps with the problem of deciding what hate is. If you don't want to hear something which is different than your own opinion, never go online. That would be the only outcome that would happen here. But the self-regulation way of doing things can be a little bit problematic as well, in terms of, again, with the definition. So who gets to decide? Parental involvement in this space? Do we need to go, okay, we just need to identify who the adults in the virtual room are, and in order to do that, we all need to have mandatory digital IDs. There's all sorts of other human rights implications to this problem.
Yeah, no, so what we'd be advocating for is like individuals themselves opting in, like making available the tools that individuals can choose to sign up for and
Yeah.
then choose to determine how they utilize. We're not advocating for a kind of requirement for them to be used or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, Certainly don't want to go anywhere near digital ID.
Yeah,
That's one
exactly.
of the key concerns here is that sort of an approach
Yeah.
because obviously, yeah.
No, so sorry to interrupt there. I'm just saying that in order, this is focusing on harm to children in particular, and a lot of the darkness on the internet is adults pretending to be children or children pretending to be adults. That if we cannot even tell who's who and who the bad actors are on the internet and who the individuals are that need their freedom of expression protected, it gets a bit murky, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely it does. So, yeah, as I say, we're not kind of advocating for a broad stroke requirement for anything to be done.
Hmm.
There are tools that individuals can themselves choose
Yeah.
to
Just
to
on
start using, and yeah.
Just on that point, I suppose there's individuals and all for individual rights, but there does, well, some people would say that there does need to be those that are advocating for child safety, adults making decisions on behalf of children, not taking away their human rights, but actually providing some protection mechanism there. And I suppose that gets a bit tricky as well. So which adults get to decide what protections are appropriate for whose children, I suppose?
Well, I guess what we're suggesting is just individual, like an individual parent
Okay.
has kind of, by virtue of the fact that they're the one who maybe bought their child the phone,
Yeah.
they are then able to to dictate the kind of experience that the child has on the phone, right?
Yeah.
So it's really just empowering parental rights, I suppose, to determine that experience.
Yeah. 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 And a little bit of.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. But I suppose it does get a little bit murky because from a digital point of view, it's not always obvious who the adults and who the children are. So
Yeah, I
that
get what you mean.
that if the only thing that you need to do to get into a dark place in the web is say, yes, I'm over this certain age and click a button, then that's not really a protection at all, is it?
No, no. So that kind of thing would be more in the kind of internet infrastructure side of things.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's not what we're suggesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
It's more about like the actual devices themselves. You can set parameters on the actual devices themselves,
Hmm.
or like at a network level. So if you have, your kind of internet router in your home, like you can determine the settings on that to kind of gatekeep
Yeah.
devices onto that network in that way. Yeah. So it's very much like individuals themselves. It's not kind of, yeah,
Yeah.
no blanket rules.
No. That makes a bunch more sense in that regard. And I suppose empowering and enabling adults and caregivers of children to have access to those resources, to understand them, because part of the problem of not being a digital native is the younger generation knows a lot more about devices and phones and access to Wi-Fi and everything than some of the older people do. So perhaps at a disadvantage, but with the right tools and the right information, some better safeguards perhaps can be put in place at an individual or a family level.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that's what we're suggesting. It's more kind of at the device network level rather than the internet, like how the internet is moderated side of things. Like that's exactly what we're kind of arguing against. Um, but yeah, I think empowering parental rights in this situation is really the way to go. And as you say, educating people about the tools that are available, because I've certainly in the process of preparing for this learned about tools that I didn't know existed.
Mm,
So I think there is a real opportunity for people like to inform the public and to kind of look at providing options for people to be able to uptake in this way.
Certainly an important topic to be talking about, and I'm sure there will be other views and opinions that will also be making submissions to the committee on this one. Groups that would like to define what harm is as something which is a different ideological position than themselves. So, hey, Steph, all the best with the submission, and would encourage people to find out more at the Free Speech Union, fsu.nz. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Great to talk with you.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.